You're listening to the Bear in Mind podcast, episode number 102.
A podcast uncovering identity, color, and love, where driving yourself crazy is totally sane and curable. Now your host, T. Bias.
There's no such thing as a bad fill in the blank. I don't know if you remember, there used to be this thing called Mad Libs. Maybe they still exist. And if they don't, then I'm aging myself. So you can fill in the blank with a person, any kind of person. There's no such thing as a bad, person, or there's no such thing as a bad parent. There's no such thing as a bad child. There's no such thing as a bad manager, or there's no such thing as a bad friend. And I wanted to talk about how we maybe even sometimes subtly do this, is that we think that there are kind of good people and bad people, and there's, good managers, bad managers, or, good parents, bad parents. And maybe we don't use some of those words. I think a lot of times people like to use the word toxic. There's also no such thing as a toxic person, by the way. And I'm going to talk to you about why I believe that and how everything kind of changed when I stopped believing that there were kind of toxic people out there. There were toxic managers, there were toxic friends. I think even an old word was friend enemy or something like that. Even having that kind of thinking, that kind of stuff about people, or putting them into this kind of they're good or bad kind of way, it doesn't really help you, and it's to your detriment. And I think we kind of get that, like, oh, well, I don't really mean that. I just kind of mean they're not healthy for me. And having that kind of belief that some people are healthy or unhealthy for you is also not going to help you have better relationships with people. And here's why. The first reason is, well, what's your definition? I'm pretty sure if I look back at my old definition of what's healthy or what's unhealthy or what's toxic, we would have very different definitions. And but for fun, let's say there's some common things, there's some common definitions people come up with when they think of toxic people. They think, they're narcissistic. Even that definition is really broad. Or they think someone's manipulating, or someone's lying, someone's cheating, someone's abusing, someone is hitting, beating. I mean, the list could go on and on, right? Of all the terrible things that humans do to each other. The definition is so big and so varied that there is no one way to decide who's good and who's bad, or who's healthy, who's unhealthy, who's toxic, who's not toxic. And even if we agreed on this definition, what would be the point? Exactly. What would be the point? How is that helping you even to have a clear definition for yourself about who is toxic and who's not toxic? And a lot of times I used to hold on to this definition because I thought it kept me in line somehow. Like it was going to help prevent me from getting into sticky situations, relationships I didn't want to be in. When in fact, you can do that stuff. You can set boundaries. You cannot be in a relationship that you don't want to be in without thinking that someone is bad or someone is toxic. Because you get to do all those things. I still set boundaries today. I'm not friends with everybody, but nor do I want to be friends with everybody and contact everybody. So having this belief, it's like you almost think that that's what's going to keep you in line. But actually just knowing what your boundaries are and what you want to do in your life, and coming from that place, you can equally show up in your life the way you want to. So again, the definition then of there's, a toxic bad person out there, it maybe doesn't need to be there, because you can do all the things that you want to do in relationships. You can set those boundaries without labeling someone that way. And I suggest that you do the latter. Set the boundaries. Don't be in relationships you don't want to be in, and let go of they're a toxic person, that's a toxic manager, that's a bad manager. Let go of that verbiage in your head. And here's why I let go of it. It doesn't feel good When I think that that person's toxic, I don't feel good. I feel kind of irritated, I feel angry, actually. I'm like, oh, I feel terrible. It really doesn't feel good to think of people that way. And even if it only feels mildly, let's say it feels mildly irritating, even from that mild irritation, what do we do then? We judge them even more. We look for all the ways in which they fit this toxic definition we've come up with, right? Because we see something that someone has done and we say, oh, see, that's why they're toxic for me. And then we go about and we can stack up all of this evidence to be like, see, voila, they're toxic. And all you're looking for is a negative about a person, which then, if all you're doing is searching for the negative and putting together evidence, are you feeling any good? And you're using up all this energy, mental energy. Maybe it doesn't even look like physical energy, but you're using all of this mental energy and focus to find ways in which this person fits your definition, when in fact you could take all that focus and take all that energy and focus on it in the relationships that you do want to be in, the people that are already in your life that you do want to be in. Because if you're spending mental energy on people that you don't even want to be a relationship and labeling them, you've decided, okay, I'm not going to be in this relationship, and labeling them as toxic, you're spending a lot of mental energy there where you could be showing up in the relationships that you want to be in the way that you want to show up. So it just doesn't feel very good, and my energy feels so drained. And even if you're in a situation where you haven't left it yet, you haven't left the relationship, or it's happening at work, you spend a lot of time so focused on how bad they are, how toxic they are, that your energy could be about leaving your job, finding a job that you want to be in. And that was kind of the big thing. I didn't feel good. I was judging. I was wasting all my mental energy. And in the end, all I did is just kept proving my belief, because that's all I was looking for. So then you just, keep proving the way that you think about something, and you keep seeing it and searching for it. And then the only result you're left with is just more evidence that that person is bad. And now the big reason why I let go of it is when I'm spending all my mental energy thinking somebody is toxic, and then feeling irritated, feeling angry, and then taking all of this mental energy and using it in a very negative way, means how was I showing up in my current relationships? I was doing the same thing. I was judging them, the people that I actually wanted to be with and hang out with them. I was carrying around this kind of judgmental lens that even with the people that I like being with, I wasn't showing up how I wanted to. It actually did the opposite. It did not keep me in line, because I was building up so much energy trying to discern if people were bad or good, or looking at it and looking for the evidence, that I was kind of coming from this, having a lot of negative emotions around it, and carrying that. It would trickle a little bit into the relationships where I valued, and then I wasn't feeling good. So in those relationships, I wasn't showing up as myself. I was showing up, kind of maybe blaming them, or even starting to look for ways in which that they were actually, in fact, not healthy for me. It started to trickle over little by little as I held on to this belief that there's toxic people, not non-toxic people. And I later switched that definition to there's healthy people, emotionally healthy people, and emotionally unhealthy people. And I don't even think that today. And it started to trickle on. And then I was just repeating the cycle in my relationships. Once I started to work on dropping that belief, because it did take work, I showed up in the relationships I wanted to show up in the way I wanted to, in a less judgmental way, in a less blaming way. And then I was even kinder to myself. I was kinder to myself when I made mistakes, when I maybe said the wrong thing. And then in turn, I could then be kind to the people that I wanted to be in relationships. I could then be like, oh, they're human. That's what happens. And that's was the big thing that pushed me over, like, oh, there's no such thing. Because when I started to see that I was repeating relationship cycles in the relationships that I genuinely wanted to be in, I was like, oh, that's where I needed to kind of break the chain, break the cycle, is I needed to let go of this. There's them, there's us, there's good and bad, toxic, not toxic, healthy, unhealthy. Drop all of those definitions and look at it as we're all human, and there's only going to be humans I want to hang out and then there's going to be humans I don't want to hang out with, and that's okay, because not everyone's going to want to hang out with me, nor should they. That's all I have for you this week. I'll check back with you next.
Thanks for listening. Listen for a new episode next Tuesday by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. Bye for now.